Well, hello. We are here on our Wednesday night, first night of our new schedule. And you can see on the board there on the screen, we've got a lot of things already out and prepped because tonight is the first of this new series that we're calling Inspirations. So, character building, all based off of a miniature. So, because this is the first episode of this, I have selected a bag of heroic figures that I received with Reaper Bones 5. And here in a moment, we're going to crack out the character sheets. I've got my player's handbook. I'm going to pick a mini at random. I'm just going to pull one out of the bag that doesn't require assembly because I didn't think about doing pre-work for this miniature. But I've got everything ready to go and got a pencil because I am going to be using pencil and creating a character. Now for this show, there will be times where we'll be changing it up, and instead of doing a character for play, maybe we'll do monsters, maybe we'll do NPCs. Because I was able to be a backer for the Reaper Bones 5 and Bones 5.5, I've got so many miniatures that are still unpainted, and I have not been able to really sort out and put on the shelf in order that I want to paint them. So I thought it would be a great opportunity for me to utilize the miniatures in a way where I actually get to spend some time looking at them and thinking about them, but also to talk about character creation, prep work for D&D, for games, whether you're from a player standpoint or a GM standpoint. Like I said, some of the miniatures we're going to be doing for monsters and NPCs. Now, I have special sheets that I'll use when we do those episodes. For tonight's episode, and many episodes really to come, we'll just be using standard character sheets. And the character sheets are available online for free. You can download and print them from Wizards of the Coast. If you're looking for something different, you can find online all different types of custom character sheets. And so there's no lack of opportunity to just follow along and do the same type of situation. The reason I wanted to do this was because most of the time when characters are being created, or monsters or NPC for that matter, a lot of the times what I've noticed is you get ideas in your head and you formulate the kind of bones and the structure of the character, monster, NPC, villain, whatever the case may be, and you develop it kind of mentally first and then put it onto paper. And on our YouTube channel, we just recently did a video on this as I was kind of brainstorming what type of show we were going to use for Wednesday night. And it got me really to thinking, what if we change that up on its head a little bit? And I'm going to show my age here and talk a little bit about basic. When basic and advanced, when I was playing that, oftentimes you weren't able to really follow that process because character creation, you use the dice, and until you had what your real stats were, that would determine what your race and class really were, especially in basic, where they were kind of tied in together with your race and class. But first edition, the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons as well kind of followed that suit based on the stats you rolled, really limited what you could play. So I have a lot of experience in having odd character creation compared to the allotment, the wide open allotment that we have now with 5th edition, where you can really create characters to suit any fancy that you have. So I thought this would be interesting. I thought it would be fun. I thought it would be great for me to kind of get a little bit more experience with the miniatures that I have to paint yet, and maybe even start putting them on a shelf in order of how I'm going to paint them, when I'm going to paint them, and maybe even use some for free giveaways. Who knows? But with that being said, welcome to Green Oaks Gaming's Twitch. And tonight's show is called Inspirations, Character Building from a Miniature. And as I mentioned, we're going to be looking at heroic miniatures. You can see the bag I separated when I received the Bones 5 miniatures. I separated out ones that I thought would be kind of heroic miniatures from others that I thought were more villainous looking or monsters, some of the NPCs, townfolk, and such. And I also have just a folder where I have character sheets ready to go. I have my player's handbook, and I really thought I'd start slow and see how it goes. Just off the back here, I do have more supplement books, so if the inspiration leads me to be able to pull something from, whether it be Xanthar's or Tasha's or Sword Coast Adventures Guide, wherever the inspiration leads me, I can run and grab those books. But I thought I would just be most prepared with the player's handbook and really look at it that way. Now, here's something I did not think about, was dice. I do have some dice off in the back, but I'm not going to go grab them. So for tonight, we will just know that we will use either a point buy or standard array. Let me know your thoughts if you're catching this, and would you rather see me roll for the abilities going forward, use point buy or standard array? I'm definitely open to ideas and thoughts and suggestions, and really just seeing what the viewers at home would like to see. So here we go. Just a random Ziploc bag of figures that I thought were heroic. I'm just going to pull a bunch of them out and look and see what we've got. Kind of a magic user. Here is possibly another magic user. Wow, lots of magic user. There's a fighter or paladin. Another barbarian or fighter, maybe. Definitely a barbarian. I don't know if these are coming out on the camera very well. I apologize. There is a halfling, it looks like, with a sword, so maybe a rogue or bard. It's hard to say for sure. You do it whatever you want to do it. Here is another halfling with a torch and a backpack and lots of gear, actually. That's kind of cool. He's got his frying pan, huge overflowing backpack. He's got his 50 feet of rope, a cup. I do see a short sword on his leg and a torch, little money pouch. That one's kind of cool. Here is definitely a dwarf with an axe, helmet, and shield. And this one looks like a fighter or a cleric. There is plate armor and a hammer with a shield. And plate mail with a sword, some type of fighter. This one is, this one's kind of interesting. It's a cloaked figure with a shield, which kind of ties in a rogue with a cleric, but with a mace. So I would say most likely a cleric. And then, see, here's another halfling with a sword. And just a couple more ones in here. There is, I think that's the same halfling with the sword. Ah, it is. I've got two of the same. How about that? A little bonus from Reaper Miniatures. Here is what looks like an elf with a bow. And here is definitely a rogue. This is a female figure with a grappling hook on rope. And this one is possibly a wizard, possibly a cleric. I mean, it's a heavier set fellow with a staff holding a book, but the hooded cloak and robe almost makes me think of a cleric. There's a cross hanging from the belt, so I would go more cleric that way. But this one here, this elven archer, is pretty cool. I'm leaning towards that one. There was another one that really caught my eye. I'm going to shove some of these ones back in here. If you get this on video on demand, let me know if you see a figure that you would like me to do. I do like that we've got two halflings, two of the same figures. Maybe that's a sign. And where is the other one that really caught my eye? Was there was a wizard and a wizard, and this one here is kind of cool. The dwarf with the axe. Here we go. This robed figure with the mace and the shield. Of course, this fighter, she was very, very cool too, kind of Viking-esque. The Barbarian. I mean, that just really screams to me Barbarian. That one's pretty easy, though. So yeah, we'll narrow it down to these three. Pop my tag back in here so I don't forget what's in the bag. And then let's see here. We've got elf with a bow and a sword, it looks like. And kind of a cloak with the hood down, a quiver on cobblestones. This one is the robed female with the shield and the mace and some bits of plate armor in there. I mean, this one here definitely makes me think of a cleric. And then the duo halfling. This one could be fun because you could use it in lots of different ways. Think of a rogue who's got kind of multi-classing into a magic user, where they are able to cast a spell like mirror image or something. I don't know, just a cool idea. Maybe you could paint one as invisible and one as solid. But I'll wait on that. Now I'm between the cleric and the female cleric or female robed figure, or the elf with the bow, so ranger or fighter. And I don't see anything coming up in chat, so we're going to do it the old-fashioned way. Heads and tails. I'm going to flip a coin. And that is tails. So we are going with this figure. This figure. And we'll unbag this figure and see how it looks. Now, I've done a few different videos on these bones figures where we rate and review them. I generally save those for my Tuesday night show when I was doing just bones painting. For this show here, we'll go ahead and give this a rating and review as well. So let's talk about the figure in and of itself. If you're new to my channel, you've seen these a lot. If not, this is a kind of a darker gray color, which is their newer bones material. The newer material is not as soft, so it doesn't bend quite as easily, and it doesn't get misshapen in shipping and packaging quite as easily. So it stays true to sculpt pretty close. And the details that they're able to get in these figures, I know this is not going to do it justice, but just the details that they're able to sculpt and maintain in their figures. I mean, you can even see the shape of the eyes there, which helps when you're painting. Little decorations, the rivets are really well defined. Pretty clean edges anywhere there's an edge. The fabric holds shape really, really well, so you're able to get those more dynamic sculpts. They really flow really, really well. And yeah, overall, this one isn't as dynamically posed. It's not swinging. It's not, taking a big massive step, anything like that. But for me, this is a great miniature for on the tabletop. It doesn't take up a big amount of room, so you can transport it super easy. And once you paint this up, it can really be evocative of what your player character is going to be on the table. So Bones 5, definitely high rated for me on the miniatures, on the sculpts, for playability, details, evocative of whether or not you're able to use them in games. This one definitely rates right up there with many of the others that I've rated. So I would say this one here I would rate at a solid 9, which for a tabletop miniatures is really good. Now I do have to apologize. I have a little bit of OCD. There's a little bit of a mold line here that I'm just going to do a quick cleanup on, just because I suffer from OCD. So a little bit quick cleanup on there, on that mold line. That way when we do go to paint it, it's already started to clean up and that won't bug me throughout tonight's show. It was just a little tag end on that mold line that was sticking out. So a little bit of cleanup there. And let's see what we've got. Bear with me, I was getting a message there. All right, so we've got the figure picked out that we're going to create a character with. I've got my character sheet, I've got my player's handbook. I am going to try to make sure that I keep the character sheet centered really nice and well to the screen so you can see as I fill this out. Now, if you're new to Dungeons & Dragons, never played Dungeons & Dragons, I'm going to go at a pretty slow pace just so that you can follow along really well. So if you want to grab your materials, please feel free. We are going to go nice and slow. We've got an hour, so why not? Now, earlier I talked about whether or not we would roll for the abilities, whether or not we would choose the standard array, or if we would do point buy. Those aspects are super important to know ahead of time. Just because as you create your character, the ability scores are going to be basically the core DNA of the game for you. Everything is based off these scores, so it's super important to know ahead of time how you're generating these abilities. But the first thing we're going to do is choose our race. Now we can see from this miniature there aren't a lot of details here. They're covered up pretty heavily. So you could almost choose any race. If you don't have the additional books beyond the player's handbook or even just the starter set, there are a wealth of races that you can choose from that are able to be played in-game officially. There are also a lot of races that are not official canon, and so those are usually called UA characters. For us, as I said, this one I'm probably going to stick primarily to the player's handbook just because I think it's going to be beneficial. So for this character, based on the scale, it's not a dwarf. Now an elf is a possibility. I do like the thought of using an elven cleric. That's a race class combination you don't see a whole ton of. Definitely too big to be a halfling. I suppose you could get away with it. Human, definitely a possibility. Dragonborn, while you could say yes, I think with the details on the face, I would say no, it is not a Dragonborn because there are miniatures that are specific for Dragonborn. So I'm going to skip that. Too big to be a gnome as well, very well. A half-elf, a half-orc, a tiefling. Now that could be interesting if it's a tiefling with the hood hiding the kind of demonic, blur that out, hiding the demonic features. So that could be a fun possibility as well. So I'm kind of stuck right now between elf and tiefling. Elf and tiefling. Elf and tiefling. Looking at the differences, I mean, they both have good kind of characteristics to play off of. And so if I were playing this character in a campaign, knowing about the campaign would help a little bit. But the way they're hiding themselves, I'm actually leaning towards a tiefling. So why not? It's a race that I don't play a lot. I create a lot of them just so I can explore how the race works in different classes. But I don't generally get an opportunity to actually play a tiefling. So it's pretty interesting. Of course, most of the material in the book you'll be able to read at your own time. I'm not going to go through and read every line. I am going to go off of some of the information here, though, that's provided in the book. And I'm going to pick a infernal name right out of the book. And I like this one here is Larissa. Makes me think of Clarissa. And then virtue names. So we are going to have a virtue name. So this is one that they kind of adopt themselves, and then they try to embody that. Because they are a cleric, hope is the virtue name. Yeah, I like that. So because we chose a tiefling, we know already that we're going to have some bonus pieces based on race. So ability score increase, your intelligence increases by 1. So I'm going to put just a +1 right near there. Also, your charisma increases by 2. So I'm going to put 2 there. So tieflings mature at the same rate as humans, but live a few years longer. So generally, when you're starting a campaign, your characters are a young age. So for this character here, on the back, we get to put an age. I'm going to put that they are 20. A little bit older than that kind of 18 time frame that we think of when you're an adult or labeled as an adult, especially in that medieval fantasy type of background. But that gives me time to build on the background a little bit. And because the features are a little more mature, you can see real high cheekbones, not a lot of, I hate to say baby fat, but baby fat in the face. I mean, just really defined jawline, nose, kind of sunken cheeks. I think it fits okay. Now, alignment. This is where a lot of people get derailed because alignment is a very, what's the right word I'm thinking of? Alignment is a very controversial subject. So for me, I play generally good alignment campaigns. However, because they are a tiefling, they generally are going to be a little more chaotic. So I'm going to put them at chaotic good. I think it'll match a good opportunity for me to roleplay that kind of chaos of the race, as well as the good alignment that I tend to want in my campaigns. So then the size, the characters generally are medium. And so for that, I'm going to put 4 foot 10 inches tall. That's a good medium. And weight, I'm going to put 1 Let's do 145 because as a cleric, they're going to be hoisting a shield, wearing armor, swinging around a weapon. They should be, not just skin and bones. They need to have some muscle on their frame. Going back to the speed, they can move 30 feet in their turn. Now they also have dark vision. So features and traits, I'm going to pop in here dark vision, 60 feet. And then they have hellish resistance. I'm also going to put that here in features and traits. And that is resistance to fire damage. Oh. Could be a benefit if we have a wizard in the party who loves to throw fireballs into enclosed spaces. Now they also have Infernal Legacy, so they know the Thaumaturgy cantrip. So I'm going to put in here Infernal Legacy. And then on the second sheet, this is the spell casting sheet here. We know that there is a cantrip that they will start with. That is Thaumaturgy. And then when they reach third level, they get additional spells. We don't have to worry about that now. And then in this bottom right corner, I know it's a challenge to see based on our camera location, but this is other proficiencies and languages. So you can speak, read, and write Common and Infernal. Excuse me. Excuse me. So that covers our race. So our race is going to be a tiefling for this character. I think it really embodies kind of that hooded nature for a cleric especially. And while I don't think you would have to use this as a character, I mean, this would also make a fantastic fighter. Possibly even a paladin with the armor, shield, and mace. You could play this character here a lot of different ways. Again, race-wise, just because of the size for this 28 millimeter scale miniature, I do think it's great for that medium-sized creature. So human, elf, half-elf, tiefling, since we're using the player's handbook specifically. I think it works really well for that. I really like the mysteriousness of having that hood pulled up. Most times when you see cleric figures, they've got maybe a helmet on, but generally they don't even have a helmet on, and they're kind of outstretched, and they're holding up a holy symbol, and they look like they're channeling divinity. This figure really, to me, speaks more mystery and actually drives me to want to play them a lot more tight-lipped and everything, but we'll get to that. We will get to that. After we have our race picked out, next we move on to the class. Oh, and I suppose, just to call out, so all of those details we put in here are in the player's handbook under each race. And then again, for other races that are in other source books, those are also going to be listed out in the same format, the same layout. Everything is going to match. So you're able to use those auxiliary supplements to build your characters as well. And there is a wealth of opportunity for different races, as well as classes, backgrounds, class pathways. So a lot of opportunity to customize your character. They don't have to be stagnant. If we were to build this character again, we could pull some information from those source books and have just a wealth of information to completely change it up and have a completely different character, even basing the same race and class. So really a fun exercise in character building. Something I do a lot. So for class, I did say already that I'm leaning heavily towards Cleric, but just looking at the player's handbook, I want to run through each of the classes and kind of weigh them. So Barbarian, this is a fierce warrior of primitive background. I mean, sure, but I just don't think that the figure really speaks that. A bard, an inspiring magician whose power echoes the music of creation. Again, sure, but light armor, same with Barbarian, light and medium armor, just doesn't, with these bits of armor here, just doesn't really strike me that well, though you could absolutely say that it's just a breastplate with the pauldrons, because you see on the sleeve here there's no armor there, so you definitely could go that way. You don't have to have this figure in full plate. As a matter of fact, we will just do a breastplate and see. A cleric, which is where I'm leaning. So a priestly champion who wields divine magic in service of a higher power. So that's interesting. What really drove me to cleric is the mace and the shield. That's kind of silly a little bit, I guess, but also kind of comical in the same fashion. So just kind of interesting how certain things can make some of us fogies like really lean one way or another. So Druid, a priest of the old faith, wielding the powers of nature, moonlight and plant growth, fire and lightning, and adopting animal forms. So here you would have light and medium armor and non-metal shields. You could absolutely paint this armor up to look like leather armor rather than metal armor. Same with the shield. You could have this be, a wood and hide shield and just decorated. Super easy. Very, very easy. If you wanted to go the route of a druid, this would be an interesting figure to kind of turn on its head, because everybody who sees this figure, not everybody, many people who see this figure would instantly think of a cleric, but they would surprise everybody by being a druid. Now that I'm thinking about it, that might be that kind of mysteriousness, tiefling, why the hood is pulled up, why they're not in that cleric pose. We may come back to that. That could be a fun twist. Fighter, of course, absolutely would work as a fighter. Monk, master of martial arts. So here the biggest thing is with the armor and shield. I can't see it being a monk. Paladin, a holy warrior, absolutely. Ranger, warrior who uses martial prowess and nature magic to combat threats on the edges of civilization. Again, light and medium armor, you could totally do a ranger out of this character. Absolutely could do it. Rogue, there again, depending on how you did it, if you made that leather armor, you could do it. However, the shield throws it off. A rogue generally is never going to be carrying around a shield. Sorcerer, because of the weapons, armor, and shield, I would say no. Same with warlock, and same with a wizard. So druid and cleric, for me, some reason are really pulling me in. Druid. No, I'm going to stick with cleric. Now, the reason I'm going to stick with cleric is because as I look at this figure and think about painting it, you definitely could do the armor and the shield to make them look like leather, so it's not metal. But as I think about druids, I think more earth tones. I'm thinking greens and browns and, maybe little hints of some floral colors, but subtle, super subtle, like flowers on a big, vast prairie or on the edge of a forest. While that isn't always the case as I think about it, the fabric here is just absolutely so well sculpted we have got the sleeve with the cuff. We've got an outer kind of robe here. You can see the short sleeve that most likely could be going into this front aspect or into that outer robe. You can see there's an under layer here, as well as the cloak. There's so much fabric in this. I want to bring some vibrant colors into this miniature. I really want to make this miniature very vibrant in color. We could do, additional contrasting or complementing colors on the shield. I want to say I want to go super bold with colors, and I think that would not go as well for a druid as it would for a cleric. Little divot there. See my OCD taking over. So yeah, I'm going to stick with where I was at. A cleric. And we're just creating them. So the first level, no experience points because they're first level. We're just creating. Now my name would go here. Of course, I'm just GM Joe. And then for the class, we know that they're going to have set parts and pieces. They're going to use a D8 for their hit points. Their primary ability is going to be wisdom. So I put a P by there just as a reminder. That's the biggest one. And then their saving throw proficiencies are going to be wisdom and charisma. So I'm going to mark those two here where our saving throws are marked. They are proficient in those. So I'm going to fill in those circles. And then we know they can use light and medium armor, shields, and simple weapons. We'll circle back to that, of course, but then we go to the section on clerics to get more building information. Now again, I'm taking my own sweet time on this. If you're interested in building characters, you do not have to take the same amount of time that I'm taking here. So just know that this process can be a lot faster, especially if you use some programs like D&D Beyond. Now they are not a sponsor, but I use them heavily for character creation because it allows me to create a lot of characters, which as a GM, as I said, I want to be able to see what race and class combinations are like so that I can better challenge my players. So if you're using a program like D&D Beyond, especially when you have the tutorials up and they walk you through it, it's not going to take as long. And of course, if you just sit down and do it, it's not going to take as long either. You can get through this process just randomly creating a character off of a miniature much, much faster. I'm just taking my own sweet time. I hope you enjoy the process. So for clerics, we know they're healers and warriors, they're divine agents. So let's talk about the clerics. So at first level, which is where our character is at, their proficiency bonus, which is right here, is a +2. Now their features, which we have down here, we know they've got spell casting and divine domain. Now we also have a chart showing us that on our spell sheet. We know 3 cantrips, so I'm going to number these 1, 2, and 3. We also know that they use, or they know, 2 and 1 first level spells. So there's actually a spot here for it. So your spell slots total, you have 2 slots. 2 spell slots. All right, so the class, we also have features, just like we did with race. And so for that, we've already covered a few of them with the 1d8. Our hit points at first level are 8 plus our constitution modifier. Now that's good to know. So current hit points, we're going to do 8 plus con. So I'm not putting that super dark yet just because I don't have that finalized because we have not gotten to our abilities yet. So our hit points we know are going to be on a D8 plus con as we level up. We've talked about our proficiencies, what we've got for light armor, medium armor, shields, simple weapons. We've already got our charisma and wisdom thrown as our proficient saving throws. And then skills. So skills, we get to choose 2 from history, insight, medicine, persuasion, and religion. What skills do I think are going to be fun to use for my 20-year-old tiefling? So, for my skills, I think I am going to use, I'm going to go a little bit different on this one here. So, I am going to go with religion. I think as a cleric it makes sense. But I'm also going to go on persuasion because I think that for someone who is trying to hide their identity as a tiefling could come in very handy in their background at some point. So again, I'm just marking those bubbles. I suppose we can talk about this here real quick, but until we get our scores, so our proficiency bonus, we're going to add to our scores to create what those numbers in the lines, in the blank spaces are. So those will also be based off our abilities. Again, everything is circling back to our abilities. So we can choose the fast equipment start. I am not going to do that. You know what? No, let's go ahead and do that. So we know we can choose a mace or a warhammer. We see already they've got a mace. So I'm going to put a mace. They can choose scale mail, leather armor, or chain mail. Now this is where I'm going to talk to my DM. Luckily, I'm my own DM in this aspect. And say, instead of scale mail, leather armor, or chain armor, can I swap that out for a breastplate? Now my DM is going to say yes or no based on a couple of different things. One thing is going to be cost and protective level. So what I'm going to do here real quick is go back to my chart on armor and look and see, is it comparable? So let's see. A breastplate is a medium armor that costs 400 gold and gives me an armor class of 14. So let's look at scale and chain. So scale mail only costs 50. Chain only costs 50. So the breastplate is definitely more expensive. 400 gold. And it does have the same armor as scale mail. Oh, the chain is a chain shirt. Chain mail is 75 gold, but still quite a bit. But because I'm a generous DM, I'm a super generous. Yeah, you can have a breastplate. Absolutely, why not? So that's going to be 14 to our armor class plus dex. Because I'm a generous DM. All right, let's keep going. So a light crossbow and 20 bolts or any simple weapon. Now they're not carrying a crossbow. They could have one tucked in on the other side behind the shield and under the cloak. But rather than that, I want to say let's look and see what we can choose for a simple weapon that could be easy to hide. And in this case, I am going to say hidden behind that shield is let's say a hand axe. Tucked into the belt behind the shield under the cloak. It's right there. You just can't see it. You just can't see it is all. All right, and then a priest's pack or an explorer's pack. So obviously they're not wearing a pack at all. So here's one of the things where I'm going to offset my breastplate purchase, and we'll get to the pack here in a bit. Well, let's go ahead and go to the packs now. So the priest's pack includes a backpack, a blanket, 10 candles, a tinderbox, an alms box, 2 blocks of incense, a censer, vestments, 2 days of rations, and a water skin. And the explorer's pack is very similar, but it's a bedroll, a mess kit, a tinderbox, torches, rations, water skin, and rope. So obviously, because this character doesn't have any, what I'm going to do is say that they lost all of their goods except out of their priest pack. Their whole backpack was stolen, so they don't even have a blanket, candles. They have the tinderbox in that pouch on their belt. They have their vestments that they'll be wearing. That's what we'll paint very brightly. And a water skin. Also on the opposite shoulder, just tucked in behind that. So I've given a lot of equipment up. This character is not going to start it because we gave them a breastplate instead to match the miniature. And then let's see, for our spell casting, you get 3 cantrips of your choice from the spell list. So we'll go back to our spell casting chapter 10 and look at the Clerics cantrips. And I am going to choose, they've already got Thaumaturgy, so I get 3 more. I am going to choose Resistance, Sacred Flame, and Spare the Dying. Good, solid cleric spells. Let's see, what else? What else do we have? Let's see. So my wisdom modifier plus my cleric level is going to determine how many spells I have, basically spell slots or spells known. Because we're first level, we would have 2 first level spells basically. Now our spell casting ability. So our spell casting class. How are we on time? Holy buckets, we've already taken a lot. That's going to be a cleric. Our spell casting ability is wisdom. We don't have our information yet for our stats, so we're going to have to avoid that. But this is the part where I really wanted to get into the domains and stuff. So real quick before we do that, we're going to do our, let's jump back here and grab our all right. We are going to go through and do our ability scores. So let's go through and do a standard array. So we know wisdom is our primary. That's going to be our highest of 15. I actually want to have a high constitution. So I'm going to do 14. I want to be pretty smart. So 13, 12. Nope. I'm going to make charisma a 10 because I've got that bonus. The 12 in strength and 8 in dexterity. So anywhere that we've got these set, we can kind of pencil them in darker. Where we've got bonuses, we're going to add those in. So 14. Our wisdom is our primary, but that's still going to be at 15. And then charisma plus 2 will be a 12. So real quick, wisdom saving throw is going to be our 15 plus 2. So the 15 is going to be a plus 2 as well. And plus 2, plus 1, plus 2, plus 1, and then minus 1 on dex. So charisma, we've got the plus 1, plus 2 is a plus 3. That's what we add to the roll. And just to see where we've got persuasion and religion, those are also going to be a plus 3 and a plus 1 because we've got that negative on our, that was a dexterity. Gosh, see, I'm missing it. This is going to be a plus 4. All right, so here's the interesting part for a cleric. Let's check time. Wowzer, time is going by. This is going to be a lot more challenging than I thought to keep it at an hour. So domains is what I really wanted to go over. The domain for the cleric that is a tiefling. So divine domains, again, I'm just using out of the player's handbook. So we've got knowledge, we've got life, light, and nature, tempest, trickery, and war. So how do we want to position this? Trickery, I think, makes a lot of sense just because of the things like the persuasion and kind of hiding their background. But I think instead, one of the things I want to avoid is the comparatives to Jester from Critical Role. What is that shield kind of? It's kind of a decorative. You know what? I'm going to go with a knowledge domain. Knowledge domain. So that gives us some spells above what we know. So that's going to be command, identify, and let's see. It's been a bit since I made a knowledge domain cleric. Value learning and understanding above all. They're exploring their background, their past, who they are in the big scheme of things. So here we go with their feats as blessings of knowledge. 2 languages of our choice. So we're going to do Elven and Dwarven. What better way to hide than being able to understand everybody you're around? You also become proficient in 2 of Arcana, History, Nature, or Religion. So here we're going to go with History, of course, important for knowledge, as well as Arcana, I think. Because why not? Now here's where it's going to suck. We've got just a +1 in Arcana, and a +1 in, nope, see I went off the dexterity again. Those are intelligence based, so we'll have a +4 and a +4. Proficiency bonus is doubled for any ability check that uses any of those. So for that one there, we're going to put +2 and +2. So that'll actually be +6 for both of those because our proficiency bonus is doubled. Now, for our knowledge of the ages for spells, we don't get that until 2nd level, and then it continues to grow in power as we continue to grow and develop. The next thing that we want to do, we've still got a little bit of time, is go through and hit our backgrounds. All right, so as we get into the backgrounds, generally Acolyte is super like standard for a cleric, especially out of the player's handbook, because it gives you a lot of temple information and everything. Charlatan would make great sense if we had trickery. But I want to change this up a little bit, and I am going to do, because I have some experience with this, I am going to choose instead this person, though they're a cleric, they've been hiding a long time. I'm going to say that they learned to fight and follow a god while they were a soldier, which makes a lot of sense for a fighter, but for a cleric gives them that opportunity to have trained in arms and armor as well. So skill proficiency, we are going to have athletics. We are going to have intimidation, which could come in handy when our persuasion fails. Tool proficiency, we're going to have one type of a gaming set, so we'll just say they've got a dice set. And then equipment, that's also in the pack with their tinderbox. Equipment, here again is where I am going to lay it on the DM's feet and say I'm okay not having anything because I got the breastplate. And my DM will say, well, that's really cool, but go ahead and add the pouch with 10 gold pieces because you had the pouch with the tinderbox and your dice set on your body. So here we would generally roll a d8 to see what our specialty is. I'm going to use just my random generator here. And let's see what we get. Let's move that onto our dice. This is going to be a d8. We got a 2. That means we were a scout. So for our background, we were a soldier, scout. Let's see. Now we get to go through and pick out our characteristics. So again, I'm going to use my roller and see what we get. For my personality trait, you know what? No, we're going off of the miniature. So personality trait, I'm going to just choose this. They don't face problems head on. They don't stare things down because they're hiding. Oh, there we go. Full of inspiring and cautionary tales. Why not? As they're sitting around the campfire, that's when they talk, is to give inspiring and cautionary tales. Their ideals. Is independence. That's the chaotic. Won't follow blindly. The bonds would be I'll never forget the crushing defeat. My company suffered, or the enemies who dealt it. What a great bond. They may be even hunted, which is why they're hiding and have taken up the robes. And then for a flaw, let's see. For the flaw, I would say I made a terrible mistake in battle. That cost many lives. And I will do anything, including becoming a cleric, to keep that mistake a secret. So just like that, we have created a pretty interesting, in my opinion, character. Larissa Hope, who is a tiefling cleric who used to be a soldier, and because of a terrific defeat in battle, possibly because of the mistake they made, the battle was lost. They are kind of hiding and looking for redemption by putting on the robes of a cleric and looking for a path to redemption through a god of knowledge. They are learning. It's about discovery. I think initially you wouldn't want to paint a miniature like this brightly colored with the standout colors in the robes like I've been talking about. But the more I think about it, some ways to hide is in plain sight. So why wouldn't they adapt for the knowledge divine domain, the robes and attire of it? Because who would hide in plain sight? So a very interesting tiefling cleric with a background of a soldier who is now hiding in plain sight. And all it cost me was working with my DM on updating a little bit of the equipment to match the miniature. And now that I found a cool looking miniature and built a character around this miniature, I don't need to go to Hero Forge and order a $50 miniature. I've got a really cool character that I can play at the table. I've got the miniature ready to go. I can paint it how I want it. It's going to look amazing. And just like that, we have built a character all based off a miniature. Now, I know we went a little over time, but I thank you if you were able to watch. If you have any questions on the VOD, make sure to leave them. And next week, we're going to be doing the same thing. We're going to be building a creature off of a miniature. Everybody at Green Oaks Games hopes you join us for it. And post up your questions. Let's see if we can't get them answered and help drive you to have more inspiration wherever your adventures may take you. Have a great evening.